Hi there, I'm Jim Bradley. I write a blog called Under the Castor Oil Tree. And if you wonder where that title comes from, it comes from the book of Jonah. So you might want to read the book of Jonah to see where I'm coming from. I have a few things to share with you this week. I normally warn people that I'm pretty political, but this week it's not as political as usual. And I'm going to read them backwards again, rather than from the last one first. That's just easier to do. And I had two that I posted on January the 2nd on Saturday. And they have to do with cleaning out my office. And the first one's called An Old Picture. While cleaning out my office, I came across an old picture that Bern thinks was a New Year's Eve party at the Gary Country Club in Gary, West Virginia. There are 10 people, young people, sitting around the table, 5 men and 5 women. 3 of the men are now dead. L committed suicide in his late 20s. K died of a heart attack over a decade ago. He had been an Air Force pilot. And Jay died of AIDS before he was 30. Only 2 men still live in that picture. Bern's cousin, Tony, and me. I don't know about the women, but I'm rather sure they're all alive. But a pretty somber picture. 3 of my friends no longer with me. And I am a survivor, deeply, profoundly sad for them. This next one was also cleaning out my office. Another thing I've found, cleaning out my office has turned up a lot of gems. One was an article from the Waterbury Republic about how I was going to be roasted after 20 years of being rector at St. John's in Waterbury. The headline was The Earthy Way to Heaven, which I enjoyed greatly. I'd love to print the whole thing, but I won't. Just a quote from Jay, who was a member of the vestry. He said, Jim is a leftover from the 60s. If he were any further left, he'd be coming out the right side. He's a hippie. He's a leftover hippie. He thought for a moment and said, he cleans up nicely, though. There's a long quote from me at the end that I stand by today. I struggle with the idea of a clairvoyant Jesus who knows it all. I like the idea of a Jesus who's making it up as he goes along. The God I know and who knows me really doesn't think I have to have a paint by number kind of faith. The church so often gets in the way of God. My purpose in life is to not let St. John's get in the way of God. If people want a little piece of God, who am I to say no? It's my job to say, here's God. I stand by that today. This was from January the 1st. I don't make New Year's resolutions. First of all, I never keep them. Second of all, when I don't, I feel bad. I don't need to make resolutions that will make me feel bad. So let me make some I will certainly keep. I resolve never to drink yak milk. I resolve never to vote for a Republican. I resolve never to visit Poland. I resolve never to take heroin. I resolve to eat meat, fish, and fowl. I resolve to drink white wine. Those I can keep. This was written on New Year's Eve. Uh, it's called Happy Happy. Have the happiest of New Year's. 2021 can't possibly be as bad as 2020 was. Biden will be president. Normal will again be normal. By the end of the year, COVID may be defeated. I won't be up to see the ball drop in Times Square. Vern goes to bed before me, but I'm usually in bed by 10:30 or so. I sleep a lot these days. I'm on a drug called leoprодine. I had my prostate gland removed years ago, but my PSA was suddenly 10.0 about a year ago, and my urologist sent me to an oncologist. Leoprодine has brought my PSA down to 0.01, and scans have detected no cancer. But a side effect of the drug is needing more sleep, which I do every night. Vern took the ornaments and lights off our Christmas tree this morning. It's a superstition from either her Hungarian mother or Italian father that the Christmas tree must be bare before the new year, or there will be bad luck. This year had enough bad luck, so she wanted to make sure the tree wouldn't cause more. I don't buy that superstition, but decided it was a good thing to do. Be well and stay well, my blog friends. Have a happy, happy one. This one I almost decided not to read, but I think I will. Anyway, it's political. It's called Being Pro-Choice. I am pro-choice. I don't think the government should decide what women do with their bodies. It is that simple. I also regret abortion. I simply do. But I do not put my regret on women who make their choice. I also object to capital punishment. I don't think the government should decide who dies. Some would say those two options are contradictory, but to me, they aren't. I just don't want the government to decide who lives or dies. It's that simple. And finally, I have an Epiphany sermon. We won't have an Epiphany service this year, but I wanted to share this sermon from several years ago. It was actually in 2013. This great day, I met them on their way, their kings from east upon their fine horse riding. This great day, I met them on their way, their kings of east in all their fine array. Their names ring with echoes of mystery and wonder. Balthazar, Melchior, and Castor. Three kings from east, the Magi, the wise men, lost in the mists of time and legend, emerged to test our imagination with their rich and inappropriate gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Fabulous and mythical offerings fit for a king in a lavish palace, delivered instead to a toddler, wide-eyed and amazed, in the humble hovel of a carpenter and his young wife. This great day, we met them on the way. Balthazar, Melchior, and Castor, strange travelers following their star across seemingly endless tracts of sand. No one knows who these three Oriental visitors really were, or for that matter, whether they really existed. We call them names born of legend, not facts. Only Matthew's gospel mentions them. And once described, they disappear from the stage, journeying home by an alternate route, going back to the mystical land from whence they came, leaving Herod terrified, and bloodthirsty. Gentile is a word that comes from the Latin word gens, which means nation. The Gentiles were the people of the nations, as opposed to the people of the covenant, the people of the promise, the Jews. To the Jews of the first centuries, the world was divided neatly into clean and unclean, holy and profane, Jews and Gentiles. Whoever the Magi were, one thing is clear: they were Gentiles. Yet they journeyed across field and fountain, moor and mountain to bring gifts to a newborn king of the Jews. One of the ways the church has described the Feast of the Epiphany is as manifestation of Christ to the Gentiles. The long-awaited Messiah of the Jews has come, not to his people alone, but to be the light to enlighten the nations, the Savior of all humankind. C.H. Dodd was one of the most important New Testament scholars of the first half of the 20th century. A phrase that Dodd left us to describe one aspect of Christian faith is this: the scandal of particularity. The scandal of particularity. What Dodd was referring to is the Christian concept that the God of creation and time chose to reveal godness in a particular time, in a particular place, through the life and death and resurrection of a particular historic figure. Many people would prefer a more general God, but the God of the Christian faith and church was manifest in a Jew born in a Greco-Roman culture of first century Israel. One of the most important learnings from Epiphany is to recognize in a powerful way that Christianity is an expansive, inclusive religion, not tied to any culture or race or language or nation. The church should be open and accessible to all sorts and conditions of men and women. Not all Christians agree with this truth. There are those who would make the church a private club for a select a few determined by the color of their skin or their class or their sexual orientation or language or the rightness of their beliefs. That attitude is the real scandal of particularity. The Magi broke through the mold, saw through the particularity of Jesus to the universality of God. Although Jesus did live in a particular time and place, God is the God of all times and all places. Epiphanies warn us Christians not to be exclusive and narrow in our understanding of God. The Jewish religious leaders of the first century thought Gentiles were outside of God's love. Their understanding of God was too exclusive, too narrow, too particular. We 21st century Christians must avoid that mistake. Our understanding of God is sometimes too provincial, too sectarian, too small and narrow. This great day, we meet them on their way. There are countless folks all around us who follow their star and seek to find God. Their backgrounds may not be the same as ours, and their views may not be orthodox, but we can make the doors of the church open to them. We must invite them in and make them welcome. We must open our hearts and our worship to them. The God they seek seeks them as well. And we are God's ambassadors, God's representatives. We must welcome them and accept whatever gifts they have to offer. We must be open, expansive, inclusive, flexible, and hospitable. God depends on us to do that. The lives of those around us depend on that. Our lives as well depend on that. This is Jim Bradley. Those have been some of the readings from my blog this week under the Castor oil tree. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope to see you again soon. Be well and stay well. Wash your hands, wear a mask, social distance. Wait for the vaccine. Be well and stay well. Goodbye.